How did you start serving on boards?
I never kind of even knew really that there were these things called boards for a long time growing up. I'm a child of immigrants, and so it wasn't like I thought, oh, wait, when I grow up, I want to be on boards. My first experience with a board was actually with a nonprofit board, and I went to Williams College. Out of the blue, I got called by an alum and ended up meeting the president, Morty Shapiro, at the time, and got invited to join the board at a very young age. And it was a transformative experience for me. So I ended up serving on the board for 12 years. And it was a masterclass in really understanding governance and leadership and around kind of board dynamics. So all of the other board members were very senior people, the CEO of MoMA, CEO of, JP Morgan Chase, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, or, just kind of very senior people. And so I learned a ton from them. So that was my first experience on a nonprofit board. Then I ended up going to Bain Capital. And so I got to go through the process of going from a private company board member all the way through to a public board. So those were my first real experiences as a nonprofit and public company and private company board member.
When you first started serving on, let's call them business boards, different from the Williams board, you were pretty young. Like, how did you show up to your first meeting when you were at Bain Capital sitting on a portfolio company board?
Yeah.
How did that feel? How did you sort of present yourself to the other directors?
Yeah, well, I think I had a big benefit, Dick, which is that prior to Bain Capital, I had actually been an operator. So I was running a division of Honeywell, and so I knew what it was like to be in the seat. And then you go to the board meeting. And so having that empathy was helpful because to me, I viewed our job as a board was not to go and micromanage the CEO or tell them what to do. I knew they were already doing everything they could and they had a hard job already. My intention going in as a board member was to say, boy, how can we be helpful? So part of the value that I tried to add as a board member was, let me listen and understand what's going on, what's happening in the business, and be empathetic to all the craziness going on. But also try to add value on, boy, what are we missing here? What are the 2 or 3 things that are most important that we need to kind of step back and see the forest for the trees? And so figuring out how to be helpful in that way was part of how I approached these boards.
I mean, do you, reflecting back on that time, obviously you're more experienced now than you were then. Do you think boards should consider age diversity more?
I think all the research shows that when you have more diverse perspectives and you bring different experiences to the table, and I think the board is no exception. In fact, the board might be the most important place where you have different perspectives and different sets of kind of points of view and things. So I think that diversity matters a lot, and age is part of that. Especially now, the pace of technological change is so fast that it's important to have people from different age groups who've grown up differently.
You've chaired a lot of compensation committees. What have you seen, or how do you recommend committee chairs support the board chair in creating in fostering a more diverse and inclusive board?
Recently in compensation committees, we've had lots of conversations around, boy, how are you dealing with this crazy world with inflation and with kind of attracting and retaining people and all the goofy, big, huge offers people are getting. We've had a lot of discussions around, hey, how are your companies dealing with, the Supreme Court and all these social issues, or with, all the, when George Floyd happened. So there's a bunch of topics where we really need outside perspectives. So please come ready to discuss and engage. And so thinking through the agenda and having the right mix of those things where you can engage and get help, that's also really important.
Do you think that there is an inverse correlation between the increase in diversity of boards and the decrease in the intimacy, positivity, support of the relationship between boards and CEOs?
If a CEO's definition of support means you agree with me all the time, that kind of support probably isn't healthy for the company. It's not great for shareholders, and it's certainly not a board that's doing great work. I think that the type of support that a CEO should want is to have a group of people who are going to disagree and are going to challenge and are going to ask great questions and are going to push on things that you've never thought about before because you don't have those life experiences or those different ways of thinking about things. But at the end of the day, they're on your side. That kind of support, I think, is what's healthy and what delivers the best outcomes for shareholders and for companies. But that kind of support requires a CEO who's ready for that and who wants that. this diversity means that we're going to naturally have miscommunications. It takes more effort to be like, wait a minute. Before I think that Yvonne is evil, let me just ask a little bit. Yvonne,
Yeah.
what did you mean? And like,
Yep.
help me understand why you think that's going to be helpful to the company.
And with more diversity comes a wider range of backgrounds, communication styles, upbringings, cultures,
Yep.
etc. Have you seen boards talk openly about that?
Yeah, I mean, so the best boards do, and the best boards have really kind of very thoughtful, very well-designed orientation programs. And as part of those, and at Williams, way back in my first board experience, it was a nonprofit, we actually put together and everything you want to know about the Williams board, but you were afraid to ask. And there was a set of FAQs, and it was just like really basic things, but it was so helpful. So for example, can you show up late to the Williams board?
Yep.
And the answer is no. This board culture has a culture that you don't show up
It's
late.
not Econ 101.
Ever.
You can't
Yeah,
skip
right,
it. Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing I do think is that the chair really sets the tone. And so the best chairs, I think, again, are really thoughtful about when you welcome a new board member in, making sure the person feels comfortable speaking up, that they
Yeah.
have ramped up a little bit already. And then the very best boards, I think, are becoming much more kind of systematic. And so the idea of doing annual surveys of, kind of self-assessments is helpful. Doing them online, you get feedback. And then every couple years, maybe getting an outside firm like Egon or whoever else to come in and just interview board members to figure out what can we be tweaking and getting better. So I think that is a continual process that is very healthy.